the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to read the Danvers Public Schools mission statement. The Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. This meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television. Is anybody else recording the meeting? Okay, it appears that no one else is recording the meeting. All right, I assume that we have not lost the sound, though that has stopped working. So let's see. All right. So let's start with items of interest to the superintendent and school committee and community.
Thank you.
Dr. Dana.
One item to share with the community this evening, and as part of the state project with Project 351, where we have 8th graders who are ambassadors from each district and take on a community service project. This year, Emily Rushbrook, one of our 8th graders, is our ambassador from the Holton Richmond Middle School, and she conducted a closed drive for Cradles to Crayons, and she wanted to thank everyone who donated. The bags were given to Cradles to Crayons at their drop-off center, and then any remaining clothing was then that maybe didn't meet the criteria was donated to a secondary organization, and the amount of clothing that she received was truly amazing, and it was incredible to see how much change our community can make when we work together. So we thank Emily for that project and thank the members of our community for donating.
Great. Are there items of interest from the school committee? I see a lot of shaking heads. And how about items of interest from the community? Nothing. Okay. So at this point, information from the superintendent.
Thank you. This evening, we have introductions for new administrators to our district. And first, would like to start at Riverside Elementary School. We have Heather Castingway joining us. Heather is coming to the Danvers Public Schools with a number of years of experience in a range of positions from elementary, with curriculum, with teaching, with work as an assistant principal, and then most recently has served as a middle school principal in an interim leave during the pandemic in Rockport. So at this time, we would like to welcome Heather to the Riverside Elementary School as our next principal and ask her to come to the mic for just a moment to say a hello to the community. We had the pleasure of bringing Heather to Riverside and meeting with parents and students and working together. We're a unique opportunity that Mrs. Powers will be at the Smith Elementary School. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. Dana, for your welcome and also for the wonderful welcome I've had from all the other administrators since I have signed my contract. So thank you very much, and it's very nice to meet everybody. I have already started a few visits with Danvers schools. I visited Riverside. I got to meet students and families, staff, very welcoming, and I've had a wonderful time with a lot of the little kids out at recess time after school. I've also done a PAC meeting already and a few interviews for some new staff members. So just getting my feet wet, and it's great to be here and be a part of your community. So thank you. Any questions?
These questions for Heather. Something, Arthur, do you have something?
I have no questions.
No
Just
questions?
Welcome to the district, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Robin, anything? No? Anyone?
Welcome.
You're all good? Welcome. We're glad to have you here. It's, we hope you have a great experience at Riverside. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And Mr. Crane, we'd ask if the school committee would take an item out of order that we
Sure.
could also introduce our new student service director.
Excellent. Absolutely.
Okay. So as part of Massachusetts law, the Student Service Director is a contract that the superintendent recommends to the school committee and one of the contracts that the school committee signed. So it was later in the agenda, but looking at tonight's agenda, we would like to be able to introduce Lynn O'Neill as our next Student Service Director. I know this time in my life I have to go back and forth between the glasses to read. Lynn is coming with a wealth of experience in special education and most recently serving as the Director of Student Services for the Wakefield Public Schools. Lynn came in and interviewed with us with a committee of 11 and did wonderful in that interview process. And then for a semi-interview process, we had our co-chairs from CPAC and Arthur Skamas as the school committee rep for special education, joined central office, and again, did an amazing job at the interview process with us, and then actually came and asked to come to visit with us, and we had a Friday afternoon out in one of the courtyards. We do a lot of, as much as we can be outside, so in one of the courtyards, and met many members of our school district, and that we were very pleased that that afternoon she called back to say that she accepted the position here in Danvers. So we would like to welcome Lynn. Lynn will start August 15th. We do have that transition with Dr. Tatum with a early or mid-October retirement. So she and Lynn and Mary Tatum will be able to work together for about 6 weeks. So we're looking forward to that work. And again, Lynn and Heather, Brendan, as our new middle school principal, were able to join us for an administrative council meeting last Thursday as our team going into the next school year. So we welcome Lynn. And the same, Lynn, would you like to come up and say a few words also?
I just want to echo Heather in saying that the welcome that I've received here has been unbelievable. I am really excited to start and get to work, and I am thrilled to be part of the Danvers Public Schools. So thank you so much for hiring me.
Thank you, Lynn.
Great. Are there questions?
I actually have a question. How are you planning to hear from the parents when you first start? Because I do feel like they are a community that advocates quite a bit, and knowing if not to overwhelm you from the very beginning, but do you have a plan in place, or have you given any thoughts to how you'll get to start to hear their feedback, or just kind of hear from them in general?
Sure. So I have a meeting set up actually this week with Mary Tatum to sort of understand from her perspective where things are and what needs to be tackled first. And then my plan is to really take advantage of the CPAC involvement. Great. Because I was thrilled that 2 of the CPAC members were part of the process. It's really difficult to get parents to take on that commitment, and I was excited to see that we have some solid leaders for CPAC. So I would start there, and then from there, I would look to their guidance to see what other types of focus groups would be necessary to really understand first while we, build an entry plan.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? All right, so at this point, we need to vote the contract, so I would like a motion to approve the employment contract for the new Director of Student Services.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carries. Lynn, welcome aboard. Thank you. We wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to hearing what you do with the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Next, we have Mary Beth Very, a very familiar face, coming back to join us for a deep presentation. We would normally be giving out deep grants at this time, but again, what a unique year that we have experienced. So Mary Beth is going to share how DEEP has supported our teachers during this past year, and looking forward to upcoming things for next year. Welcome, Mary Beth.
Thank you, Dr. Dana. Thank you, School Committee, for allowing me to come this evening to give an update, year-end update, an overview of DEEP for folks not familiar with us. Again, Mary Beth Very, current co-president of DEEP, the Danvers Education Enrichment Partnership. For those not familiar, DEEP was created back in the early 90s by local businesses saw a need in the schools and wanted to help out. So today, the mission of DEEP is to build a relationship with the Danvers schools and area businesses to help provide Danvers students and teachers additional opportunities and resources for an exciting and engaging education. DEEP is able to help the schools annually by providing teacher grants. These grants enhance the resources available to students, improve technology in the classrooms, and provide unique learning opportunities that provide a competitive advantage for students that will have the utmost meaningful impact not only today, but in their future. DEEP is comprised of an executive board and board of directors. Officers in the executive board include myself and co-president Mari Matt. Michelle Keith is our treasurer, and Angela Chumas is our secretary. Our board of directors includes Mark Strout, Glenn Bucci, Richard Stoney, Kevin Dillon, Donna Hopkins, and Jill Michaud. Being a nonprofit, DEEP relies on fundraising annually to support our budget. The fundraising includes memberships that range from $10 to $1,000, monetary and in-kind donations from alumni, retirees, community members, businesses, special events like the DEEP Wine and Food Tasting and Downtown Holiday Tree Lighting, and ongoing programs which include the Currens Cares and DEEP Save a Seat program. All this fundraising has helped DEEP to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Danvers Public Schools over the years. Since 2015, DEEP has contributed over $100,000 to teacher grants alone. As you can see, the list up here on the screen, those are the amounts just in teacher grants that we have given. Teacher grants, teachers in the Danvers Public Schools are eligible to apply for a teacher grant. Each applicant, individual, can get up to $500. If groups of teachers apply for a grant together, if there was a big project or something, it's $500 per teacher. So if you had 5 teachers, that's $2,500. All we ask is that they write up a proposal and submit it in an online application, and then we have a group of volunteers that review those grants. Arthur has been one of the reviewers in the past, and we appreciate his volunteerism for that. But we've been able to provide all those. Even this year, we were able, even though we did not have teacher grants for teachers to apply online, we still contributed $17,500, which was to be divided amongst all the schools to help with whatever was needed for this year's learning opportunities, whether it was buying additional manipulatives for kids in the different cohorts, buying additional copies of books. That $17,500 went towards that. And starting in this fall, we hope to do the teacher grant application again. In addition to teacher grants, DEEP has also financially supported the following programs and events: the Step Up for Colleen 5K, the Town of Danvers MLK event, DHS Project Graduation, the DHS DECA program, which this year we not only helped them with their virtual competition, we also contributed $2,000 to them for them to buy new DECA blazers that they use at the competitions. We support the DHS Band and Chorus, this year specifically contributing $5,000 for their upcoming trip to Hawaii. The DHS Credit for Life, the high school and middle school stores, DEEP has provided seed money to help get those stores created and up and running. The high school program paid back the loan. Originally it was a loan. They paid that back to us, but they needed the finances to get it started, and DEEP was more than happy to contribute to that. We also contributed to DHS Model UN and the DHS students that attended the New York Times summer program. You'll see that a lot of it is, Danvers High, middle school. The middle school and high school, their packs are not as formed as the elementary packs. And that is why some of the money goes for different programs to those. But again, all the teachers are able to apply for a teacher grant. So again, it is, DEEP is contributing throughout the district. Even with COVID restrictions, this year DEEP was still able to hold monthly meetings virtually. We worked with Danvers Cares, DCAT, and the town to produce and present the virtual downtown holiday tree lighting program that aired on DCAT in December. We worked with the curriculum department to present this year's DEEP HRMS spelling bee that was held virtually. And last year and this year, well, last year we hosted the DEEP Breakfast of Champions. Wasn't a breakfast, but we went around and gave each retiring staff member a sign, as you can see, to be on their lawn, as well as gifts for them. But this year we will be holding our DEEP Breakfast of Champions this Wednesday at DHS, where we'll be honoring retiring Danvers Public School staff, our corporate sponsors, and this year's DEEP champions, who are Jeff Lieberman, former Director of Technology, Tom Powers, former Food Services Director, East Boston Savings Bank, a community business that has sponsored us or worked with us over the years, and former educator Eric Wormstead, who over his 33-some-odd year career here at Danvers, worked in all the schools at one point, elementary schools. He recently passed away this year, so we're honoring him as well. His family will be there. DEEP is a volunteer organization. All executive board members and board of directors are volunteers from the community. DEEP is always looking for new members to join our organization to help DEEP grow. Anyone can attend our monthly meetings. Meeting dates, location, and time for next year will be posted in August on our website. Still working out the logistics of where we might be in person. And for the last 5 years, why I have served as the liaison from the school committee, we are looking for a new DEEP liaison and look forward to whoever that is to be able to attend our monthly meetings so you can hear what DEEP's doing and how DEEP can help the schools. For more information on DEEP, people can find us at supportdeep.org or at our Facebook, Danvers Educational Enrichment Partnership, or on Twitter at Deep Danvers, or on Instagram at Deep Danvers. And with that presentation, I would like to open it up to questions or comments.
Does anyone have questions or comments for Mary Beth?
I have a comment. Thank you for everything that DEEP does for our teachers, students, and schools. So I appreciate all the hard work that goes into this, and I know the volunteer hours is plentiful, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say we missed you last month, so I'm happy you're back.
I come back every month. I can find something to talk about, don't worry.
She's coming back every month.
I'm sure I'll be here. I still got a kid in the school, so again, I do this because I care about the schools, I care about the children, I care about the families. I've been involved since my oldest, who's now 20, started at Riverside, and I still have one that will be a senior next year. So I do believe, and again, I came from a private school. I went to private school, elementary and high school, and then I had children. My husband's a public school teacher, and I'm like, what's this public school thing? But I have since embraced that public school education, and I do believe in it. And I do believe here in Danvers, we're very lucky and fortunate to have what we have, and more people involved. And again, I have my husband working in a different district. I know what goes on in other districts, and I have a niece that's a teacher, and my sister was a teacher. So I do realize what we have here, but I also realize that, work can be done on everything. So I want to thank, again, school committee for inviting me here this evening. Thank you, ladies, for taking out papers and running, and congratulations on winning. And, hopefully more and more folks will get involved. And when I say DEEP is always looking for volunteers, it's true. We have a small board right now, but we're hoping to grow because there are some folks that have been on it a long time that no longer have children in the school system. You don't have to have children in the schools, but when you leave elementary school and you go to middle and high school, there really is no more real pack. So if you still want to be involved, there's still opportunities for you. And hopefully next year we'll see some new folks. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Beth, for all that you do and all that you have done and what you'll continue to do. All right, Dr. Dana.
Thank you, and thank you, Mary Beth. We look forward to Wednesday's DEEP breakfast, and we'll be outside the weather's looking good for Wednesday morning, so we're looking forward to that. Thank you. Next on our information from the superintendent portion of our agenda is our strategic plan update. And this evening, we will be giving, Mary, Keith, and I will be giving highlights of our accomplishments related to our FY21 district goals and the final accomplishments from our school councils. You do have the school council reports in your packet. This year with pandemic, the elementary schools really worked together, and you see one for our elementary. In past years and in future years, you will see one for each elementary school. So for tonight's strategic plan update, we'd like to again talk about our priorities and then the FY21 accomplishments. We've organized them around the priorities. We'll talk again about summer programming and highlighting how we got to where we are based on student data at the elementary level. And Keith will then be able to, that will be Mary's section, Keith will then give us an update from DESE, what we know as of today. And we do have another Zoom call with the commissioner for this Wednesday. So we will keep the community updated over this summer with changes. And then Portrait Art graduate finish with how we pull this all together in looking at next year. Okay, Mary, may I ask you the next slide? Thank you. Looking back at the beginning of this year, the Danvers Public Schools in a pandemic, we talked about reopening priorities, providing consistency in our teaching and learning. We wanted to continue to make sure we have safe and supportive, culturally sustaining and equitable learning environments that have the consistent routines for our students and building strong relationships among students and teachers. We wanted to continue our work that we started really honing in on prior to the pandemic of supporting student learning through the differentiated and small group instruction and seeing that in the curriculums, especially at our elementary and middle school levels that we had in place. And then to finally to continue to develop our students to be skilled communicators and problem solvers as they were using their technology and applying it to the real world, the real life situations with that project-based learning. So from there, we will look at our 3 priorities. The first one, and again, engage students is at the center of all of our work in the strategic plan moving forward. We'll begin with diversity, equity, inclusion. And I've listed from the 3 levels from our final accomplishments some of the highlights from this year. Again, speaking about that relationships are the core, that really moving from our core values of courageous caring and confronting equity and racism within our community and the different conversations and proactive ways that we are working with our students. We have had consistent communication with families throughout the pandemic. The elementary has worked on elementary culturally responsive read alouds, and that will continue, and we're seeing that during the month of June with Juneteenth also. Using the use of more culturally responsive text in our elementary libraries. The elementary librarian has been working with our elementary team and having additional books, mirrors and windows for students to see themselves in the text, but also to make sure that we are using them in our classrooms also. The middle school began a student leadership council this past year. At the high school, we had our high school anti-discrimination club, and then we also had training with our sports, our student athletes, with equity in the implicit bias training. For professional development during this past year, our administrators worked with ADL. We had the elementary faculty work with about read alouds. They also had training for preparing for Juneteenth coming up this week. And then Mary also led an anti-racist, and we have a spelling error there that we need to fix, which we will, teacher study group. Mary can do that right here in real time. There we go. Thank you, Mary. And then also in looking at the diversity, equity, inclusion, the school committee's independent investigation, and then as of tonight's meeting, also the second reading for our policy audits that we completed during this school year. The second priority for our district with the coherent curriculum and instruction, and assessments. Here are the highlights from our 3 levels. At the elementary level, continuing with elementary benchmark assessments, and Mary will talk about that shortly. The middle school continued to use the common formative assessments and working together to support our students. At Danvers High School, looking at the content, really worked with priority standards and then having the formative assessments for supporting students and moving forward during the pandemic. At Danvers High School, we continued with our work with the Innovation Pathways, the early college, received a grant from the Department of Education, and will be working more closely with North Shore Community College, which also led to a study group, a group of teachers working with Mary and working with North Shore Community College to prepare for next year. Our work continued with the multiple tiered system of supports, not as far that we wanted to get, but looking at the ways that we could support students, especially during the times of the remote learning, the hybrid learning, and supporting students with attendance during this time, during this school year. The formative assessment for results, the FAR cycle, that has continued again, not to the extent and the level that we had planned on, but the foundation of it and the basis. And for some of this during a pandemic really showed the why of why we needed multiple tiered systems of support and why we need the formative assessment. So we will continue with that professional development in our work in our professional learning communities and going into next year. And a real benefit is the collaboration between our general educators, our special educators, and the support staff of all of the members, the adults in our community coming together and collaborating, working together to support our students during this year of education during a pandemic. And then our third priority, the safe and supportive learning environments. Some of the areas here for the highlights from our school improvement plans. The COVID mitigation strategies, looked at that every month with school committee meetings, and sharing that with our school communities. We have the multiple schedule changes that so that we could have increased in-person learning as soon as possible. The SEL, social and emotional learning, professional development continued with different activities also, although our faculty meetings were by Zoom this year. We continue to integrate the social, emotional, professional development during the school year. Student leadership was seen at all levels of working together and hearing their voice and working with the anti-racism, having diversity, equity, inclusion, and really helping us in different ways connecting with students during the pandemic. At the elementary level, we continued with we added to make sure in this schedule a 30-minute daily SEL block. The middle school had success coaches, and at the high school from last month's school committee meeting, you heard a presentation about the advisory committee. So overall, taking from the work from the school improvement plans and putting that into under our 3 priorities for the district, those are the highlights. So I'd ask Mary next is going to take those highlights and look at summer programming and next steps.
Right. So as I talked about last month, we have a couple summer programs running. The first is with the Danvers Recreation Department, where we applied for a grant that provided academic enhancements to the Falcons and Journeys programs. So I've been working with Nick and Shannon at the Danvers Rec Department to do some planning. And as of Thursday, I got some numbers of students. So you can see listed up there the numbers of students participating. We're hoping that as the this week goes through, that we have increased these numbers. Unfortunately, the Journeys program numbers are low, but we are working with the Holton Richmond administrators and teachers to really promote this program with the students. The Danvers Rec Department was over last week at the lunches at the middle school, so they were able to do some recruiting as well at that point. We're still hopeful, but we're able to staff this program with many teachers. Again, we're having rising kindergarten, or rising first grade through 5th grade. So we have at each grade level 2 teachers in the classroom working at each grade level. So we have quite a bit of staff working at that program. Then what we're working on this week is the tutoring programs, both at the elementary level and at the middle school level. At the middle school, they emailed out information last week to students qualifying for tutoring services, and that was based on teacher recommendations. So they based it off data that they had collected through the school year. So far, 17 students have registered for that program, and we're working on putting schedules together for our teachers. At the elementary level, we just collected our end-of-the-year reading data last week, at the end of the week, so we are taking that data and today emailed out families of students that are eligible. We looked at the students that scored well below on our benchmark assessments, and on average, there were about 17% of the students were well below the benchmark at each grade level, and those were the students that we emailed out information to. So, and as I looked this evening, it went out late this afternoon, so around, I think 15 people had responded to that survey so far. So it's only been like a few hours, so that is good. So we're, again, offering it to about 133 families. And then just to show you on average, this is what happened. For tutoring, we're looking at our current first graders through fourth graders to offer services. These are the percents of students who are below that benchmark. So this was the first dig into the data to get that. We were very anxious to get our hands on it so that we were able to identify students for our summer tutoring program. And as we move forward through this week, we're going to be digging deeper into the data and really helping us be ready for the start of next school year. As we talked about last month with the ESSER funding, we're adding reading teachers, additional reading teachers into our ranks. So we'll have 2 reading teachers at each, or 1.5 or 2 reading teachers at each school. So that's really going to help us with the multi-tier system of support and really help to service students. And that are, right now we're going to have some that are able to attend the summer program, but for those that are unable, we are going to be ready to go on day 1 with meeting those students' needs. Now, we'll turn it over to Keith.
So as we've talked about, we're heavy into our planning for the next academic year. On May 28th, DESE did release updated guidance. Primarily, it removes all of the health and safety protocols beginning for the 2021-22 school year with the following exceptions. So looking at elementary masking, that is still to be developed. That is really dependent upon the vaccination schedule for children of those ages, as well as looking at the overall case counts across Massachusetts. We continue to wait for additional information around quarantine and contact tracing, but no mask will be required for students and staff in grades 6 through 12, as well as distancing no longer required in the classroom and lunch. DESE has stated that their expectation is that masking will continue for summer programming as they are considering it an extension of the current academic year. We do have another conference call with the commissioner scheduled for this Wednesday, as Dr. Dana mentioned, that we're hoping to learn more information about those requirements. So where do we go from here? Really, it's returning back to somewhat of what our old normal was, so adjusting all of our schedules, our assignments, our routines, all of our practices back to our pre-pandemic models. I think we're also looking at it as an opportunity to update some things that probably need updating for a number of years previously, so this is the opportunity to take what was good that came out of the pandemic and continue to leverage that into the future. I know many of our teachers are wondering, how are we going to return all of the items that we have in the storage containers? So DPW is getting ready to embark on that work, and how do we really bring that back to create our flexible learning environments and couple a lot of that furniture with some of the new furniture we needed to buy through COVID, so student desks, and looking at how we morph all of that back together. So we'll be working on that over the summer. And then some of the Danvers health and safety protocols that we had in place last year, we will continue for next year just because they are good sound practices. So we'll continue to use the air purifiers that we were able to purchase, as well as having the filter, not the filers, the filter changes on the HVAC system completed on a quarterly basis, and looking at what other best practices are, but we'll return to our standard cleanings and coming back to kind of what our new normal is going to be for the foreseeable future. We also do realize that, especially coming out of this, that we need to remain flexible, so we are ready to pivot, and things like plexiglass that we had put in place for this year is going to be put into storage, but we're definitely not disposing of anything, so that should there be a variant or something else, hopefully not, but that we're ready to pivot where needed, so we don't go into a closure or anything like that experienced last time.
Thank you, Mary and Keith. And to close out this part of our presentation on the strategic plan moving forward, We shared this at our last meeting, and we'll be planning over the summertime for a district council, and in speaking with one parent, really put it in perspective of, we know what school councils are, that we have community members and faculty and students come together with the administration and teachers to really talk about the goals of the district, and we would be doing this at the district level next year, and the work will really be looking at our diversity, equity, and inclusion within the portrait of a graduate, of what are those really skills and competencies that we want to see when we have our students graduate from Danvers High School. And with that, we did have a beautiful graduation on Saturday, and be able to have that out at the stadium, and listening to our high school students. I think there were 8 students that spoke, and being able to listen to them about their experiences really helps us to think about our portrait of a graduate and the successes, and then our students being able to define their definition of success as they graduate from Danvers High School. So we are looking forward to implementing a district council and sharing that with the community as the school year begins in September. Thank you.
Are there questions for Dr. Dana or Mary or Keith? Jeff, you want to start?
Sure. So just a couple quick ones. I might ask this every year, but on the reading, the grade level reading, at the beginning of the year, 53.56%, middle of the year, this is for elementary accomplishments, middle of the year, 59%, end of year, I think we still needed to know what that was. How does that compare to previous years? Higher, lower?
Yep, that's why if you look on the chart in
Yep.
there, that we started with January 2020, so that was the mid-year of 2020, pre-pandemic, and that's around the percentage, around 70%. What happens is mid-year, the benchmark is lower than the end-of-year data. So, for example, the 59% that you're seeing on the mid-year, and then just like this, some decimal point percentage increase when you get to end of year,
Yep.
that is okay. That was okay, good though, because the benchmark increased for students from the mid-year to the end year. So we were happy that at least that students held their scores from the mid-year.
Okay, good. And then how do you conduct those assessments? Is that a FAR cycle assessment, or is that a specific?
That's
unit
a
test?
specific assessment called the running record that we do with students. So the teachers conduct that. They sit next to the student. It's an individual conference that they have with kids and perform that.
Okay,
The
great.
kids do a reading and they answer some comprehension questions afterwards.
Okay, because in looking through the accomplishments, and I feel like we have these in more detailed plans, but in the final accomplishments, the reading for elementary seemed to be the only numerical sort of learning accomplishment that we have. But we have a lot of accomplishments where we certainly did a lot of training. We accomplished a lot in terms of working with different teams. Certainly getting through this year, I think, is an accomplishment in and of itself. But do we have any specific learning goals that we typically publish, or do we not do that? Like, for example, I would never want an MCAS goal, right? But do we have some other ones that maybe we do at a lower level?
We have used in the past the MCAS as one of the indicators to be able to share, where it is the statewide assessment, and we will be taking a look at that again in the September, October to share with school committee more in depth, and then looking at what are those in-district assessments also. Definitely at the elementary, the running records, we see the consistency there, the work at the middle school and high school. And then we look at the other data, the AP, some of our SAT scores, of looking at that. But that, I think, going forward, continuing to look at the types of external data and that we do use for being able to monitor our students' progress, and then being able to get back to the FAR cycle and be able to share more of that data with our community as we go forward over the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I feel like we used to have things like graduation rates,
Yes.
AP. I know we have a lot of students that take AP, even though more so than other school districts, which I think is great. So yeah, I was just wondering if there were things, but I assume it's because of this year and what we're trying to accomplish. So that's good. Thank you.
And that data comes out in the fall, which is always that difficult piece of we're finishing out a school year. This is our local data is what we're able to share, so that we wanted to start with sharing that elementary data this evening, and then maybe to share more of the external data in the fall.
Great, thank you.
Alan?
So you shared a percentage of those students that were falling well below a reading rate, and then in the final accomplishments PDF, you're providing a full percentage of reading at or above a grade level. Where is the greatest delta, I guess, right now? Are you seeing it in certain grades? Are you seeing it in certain schools? I think, what I'm speaking to are a lot of parents who are sitting home watching this right now saying, I don't believe my child is at a certain grade level in terms of reading. How will they either know that their child is at a certain level, or will they know? How can they know?
Yes, the teachers sometimes in the conferences share that reading level data with the parents during the conferences, so that's how parents know. If parents are interested, though, and they don't have that information, they can reach out to their teacher.
And they can reach out to them now, because obviously
Yeah.
the conferences have already taken place.
Right, so they can find out their end of year data. That was due last week, so we're there. We are seeing that, at grade 2 and 3, that there are some weaknesses there, not drastically different than the other grade levels, but that there definitely are at those grade levels. They were key years that they missed in the pre-pandemics, that they had not as full years of schooling like they would have traditionally had we didn't have the pandemic. So again, missing maybe a year of foundations, phonics for the some of the grade 3 students the previous year, missing that March to June time. Same thing with the current second graders. They were first graders, and that end of the year is such a big time for first graders to really accelerate their reading skills. So that was difficult because they were fully remote at that time. So we've worked hard this school year to really help make gains in those areas, but we still have some work to do there.
And again, your hope is with the additional reading specialists at the elementary school level, your goal is the thought that this will be made up, I guess?
Yes, we're really working on that multi-tier system of support model, and then, as we start the next school year, we'll have our plans for you, but that is, we're really going to work hard with our classroom teachers. We're small group differentiated instruction is a big goal. A lot of our professional development will be focused on that, and the reading teachers are there to go in and support in the classroom and help model and help them think about groupings for students for them to use in that small group differentiated, and then provide them with specific skill-specific lessons resources that they might need.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of link this to summer programming, because I think parents are nervous right now that their children, I'm going to speak mostly probably from the elementary school level, like the data that we're looking at, that they lost so much time. So for the summer programs that you're offering through Falcons and Journeys, this is at a cost, correct?
Yes.
To families.
Yes, and that was part of the program sponsored by the Department of Education, that they wanted you to tie it to an existing program.
Okay.
And that you couldn't run a program, you couldn't start a new program. You had to run it with an existing program. And then the other piece that was in the RFP was that we could not provide tuition reimbursement, or we could not offer free tuition to those programs.
Okay. Which I would add is that there's the two different types. So we would always do some type of tutoring, and it would normally have come under special education.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at it again of the multiple tiered system of supports, what other strategies or what have we done in the past that we can do? So the tutoring piece
Is free.
is our work with the students that based on their reading data for that support. And then the journeys and the status, and it could feel like a semantic of words, but it's really looking accelerating.
Okay.
So taking an opportunity of that engaging piece, project-based learning, how can you keep learning going during the summertime in an engaging way? And that's the intent of the acceleration piece, and why they're 1 week opportunities where the tutoring would be, Mary, I think you said 6 sessions of 30 minutes. over the course of a summer. So looking at that, sort of that weekly check-in with students at that level.
And I know emails have just gone out, but what is your hope in terms of engagement, either for the ELA tutoring for at the elementary level, the middle school tutoring? Do you guys have a goal set in terms of how many students or families you would like to participate?
Yeah, we would love it if, all 133 families were able to engage in that. That we'd be, going back out to look for a few more tutors if that actually did happen, but we would love it if around 100 families, I think we have capacity right now probably for around 100 families to take up part in the tutoring. And we would love it, we have quite the staff ready to go for the Falcons program, so we would love more participation in that program.
I'm very surprised by the participant.
I know. I'll have an update on Wednesday as my meeting with Danvers Rec in the morning, on Wednesday morning, so.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin?
Yes. Okay, so I have a couple questions about the reading goal also. So I know that as far as phonics, we use foundations, that's correct, right?
Foundations, yes.
Okay, and then what's the other reading program that we're using? Is it still Lucy Calkins?
Yes, Lucy Cogson's units of study for reading and writing.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about that. Just because recently, I think it was this past October, there was a lot of evidence that came out, or discussion research that came out, that Lucy Calkins isn't really evidence-based research anymore, and that should not be our main focus when we're looking at reading instruction, because it's not explicitly teaching reading. So I'm wondering if we have something in the plan in the next few years to really look at how are we supplementing reading for K through 5 with additional sources, evidence-based programs that are not just Lucy Calkins, because
Right.
I will tell you, I'm really concerned about that. I mean, we know reading K through 5 is, crucial. Grades, 3, once they get to 4th grade, it's, just reading to learn. You're not learning to read, you're reading to learn. And I guess, so we have this evidence from the reading logs as far as where kids are, right? Beginning, mid, end of year, but a reading log is not necessarily an evidence-based information to really share where these kids are. So I guess, do we have a plan in place?
I do want to clarify what the science of reading is what you're referring to, and so they've come out to criticize Lucy Calkins' programs because they are not phonics-based, and that they're that her programs don't do a lot with the phonological awareness. So we, early on, went to Foundations as a phonics program. So we were aware that her strength is in the comprehension part of reading, and that we really focused on using her work for that, but that the phonics part, we are using Foundations K-2, and then we use a program called Words Their Way for grades 3 to 5, so that we have a separate phonics program aside from Lucy Calkins reading units of study. So again, we're relying on Lucy Calkins for the comprehension end of reading.
Okay, and are we supplementing with anything else for comprehension too?
We feel like her program is pretty strong, and we've had great results from our teachers with looking at kind of benchmark assessments on the comprehension using that work.
Okay, I just wonder because, and I know Jeff said MCAS is not the only thing, and I 100% agree with that, but I'm wondering if looking at MCAS data for these grade levels and comparing them to other districts where maybe they've adopted something else or brought something else in, if we would see that our reading scores are going up. And I don't want to just say through MCAS, that's not the only thing, but I think that we are seeing that there are some differences, and we need to just keep continuing to look back at that so that, a kid's not left behind, right? So, and are we pushing everyone to where, to the level that they should be at? So.
Is there a response?
Oh, no, I think that was her recommendation, so yeah, we could, look at that. Again, we won't have any MCAS results this coming school
Right.
year, so we will look at that as well. Many districts in Massachusetts do use Lucy Calkins, but there are a few that are around us that might not.
Okay. You all set?
Thank you.
Arthur?
I don't think I have any questions, but I think I'm hearing what I want to hear, I think. You know, I mean, I think that the pandemic is basically over, and I expect that we'll be doing, you know, regular, back to normal school in the fall, and I tend to guess that by that time they'll get rid of the mask requirement for elementary schools kids too, so I think that'll be good. But the fallout of the pandemic is not over yet, and so the thing that I've been, what I mentioned last time and what I'm really focused on for the next few months, I think, is that we need to do everything that we can, and again, I think I'm hearing this, to make sure that everybody gets back up to where they need to be, where they should be, you know, as soon as possible. And it's going to take, I think, it's going to take a good portion of next year for some kids. I mean, some kids will be back quickly. Some kids already are probably,
Yeah.
and others are going to take a while. But that's where, I mean, the past year was focused on trying to deliver education the best that we could in all the changing circumstances, which was a full-time plus job. The next year is going to be bringing everybody back to where they should be, so that by the time we get to the following year, everybody is hopefully back to exactly where they should be, if not better. So I am here, and some of Alice's questions were around this too, but I think that what I'm hearing is that we're trying to use the resources to do that. We're going to continue to check and see where everybody is. We're going to be doing that as long as we have to, and so that's really my focus, and that's really one of where I think all of the vast majority of our resources should be pointed to until we get that back to where we need to be. So, so just to comment again, I in terms of what I, you know, as I'm hearing it, I think I'm hearing what I want to hear, and I just want to make sure that we keep pressing on that until we're where we need to be. So, thanks.
Thank you, Arthur. Yeah, I think that that goes for all of us. The most important thing that, particularly at the beginning of the year, and it's something we have to be working on now, and it sounds like we are, is that maybe, in fact, definitely more than any other year, you're going to have students who start next school year at very different places. Some within the same classroom, they're going to have a range of where students are and where they should be. And so we're going to need to support those students and support the teachers in the classroom. And it starts with good assessments, and as Arthur said, it sounds like that's what you're up to right now. But then making sure that we have the support measures in place, you know, to make sure that each student gets what that student needs to get caught up, because that's really what we're talking about. And every school district is going to have to go through it, but it's going to be critical if next year is to go at all smoothly. So please keep us updated. You know, we'll probably talk about this again at our July meeting. I think that's the most important part of the July meeting, is what's happening with the summer programming. The other question I had was around the middle school tutoring, and forgive me if you already addressed this, Marion, I couldn't hear. But in terms of, you know, you've invited a certain number of students and families. I think you had 17 that had signed up so far. And again, I hope I'm not making you repeat yourself, but, you know, what's our target? What are we looking for? How many students have we invited?
I think they invited around 50 students.
50 students?
50, and then we got about, yeah.
So, you know, I guess to all the parents who received invites, please, this is the best opportunity that we can offer your student to get what they may need to be caught up by the beginning of the school year. And yes, it's tough, you know, to ask students to learn in the summer, but this has been such an unusual year, and we want to help students as much as possible. So if the opportunity is out there, please take advantage of it and contact the district and you know, get the tutoring that your student might need. So, all right, anything else on this topic from anyone? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Dana.
So next we'll move on to our COVID-19 updates with Keith Taverna.
So this is our monthly going through the data. Happy to see positive trends. I will say during the end of the month of May, we did see higher case numbers in our schools than we had seen previously throughout actually the whole year, but they are moving in the right direction today. So for the week of May 14th, there's 28 cases across the town of Danvers. There were 7 cases in the schools, 3 at the elementary level, 4 at the secondary. Our vaccination rate had reached about 67%, and that number stays fairly steady, goes up to 68% by today, but is a nice high level. Our positivity rate was at 2%, and about 39% of the cases were under the age of 18, with 1 student that was quarantined, 4 students that were quarantined based on school-based exposure. So if we go to the 21st, you'll see that cases come down to 16 cases, 3 in the schools, a 1.78% positivity rate. That week, only 13% of our cases were in children, and then we had 0 students in quarantine based on school exposure. The 28th, we have 26 cases, 6 in the schools, 2 at the elementary, 4 at the secondary level, a 2.3% positivity rate, with 50% of our students, 50% of the cases in children under the age of 18 and 1 student who is quarantined. And then starting the week of 6/4 is where we really see a decrease townwide. There's only 3 cases in Danvers that week, 2 of them in the schools, a 2.26% positivity rate, and no students that were being quarantined. And then for last week, we had 6 cases in the town. 1 of them was a student in the schools with a 1.45% positivity rate, and 50% of the cases townwide were in there. It looks like that slide didn't make it into here, into the presentation, but those are the stats. So through today, which our data cycle closes on Wednesdays, we've had no cases this week in the schools, so we continue to see the positive trends in Danvers that we're seeing statewide.
Any questions for Keith? Very positive results all around for the town and for the schools. It's really down, it sounds like it's down to a trickle at this point, the odd case that comes up. So very good news, and thank you, Danvers, for going out and getting vaccinated when the opportunity came up. It's made a big difference.
Thank you. And the last item for information from the superintendent is our monthly facility updates with more very good news about Smith Elementary School with Keith.
So we are excited. The Smith School project is coming along. We reached substantial completion last Friday, so that is a major milestone for us. Teachers are busy packing up this week into early next week, and movers will be here Tuesday of next week. So it's really becoming real, and we're excited to have the students and staff and community get to enjoy the building next year. We'll go through just a few pictures of the progress. So you'll see this is one of the outside entry areas on the top picture, which actually opens up to a concrete plaza where students will be able to do outdoor learning. And then this is the roof. It kind of has this angle that those windows bring in lots of natural light into the lobby. These are pictures kind of pulled back, so the top one again is the school from the front. So this is what it will look like when you pull up to the building, and then this is the concrete that I was talking about, that outdoor learning environment. There'll be a pergola out there, and it really will be a nice, welcoming, inviting space. A lot of the landscaping will take place over the summer, which is why it looks a little bit more unfinished in these particular exterior shots. Now this is inside the gymnasium. Looking back, the top picture again towards the cafeteria with the stage that goes between the 2 spaces, and then you can see that this is a picture of the floor as it was being put in. The floor is now completely finished. There's a Bulldog logo in center court. It's all waxed. The gym is ready to go. You can see the rock wall in the far distance. This is the new cafeteria serving line at the top part, so we're excited that it's got nice pops of color, and really, again, it's an inviting space for kids to come in and get their school lunch. And then this is a look in the main lobby of the building. The gymnasium is on the left, and the main office is to the right. That is how you enter the building as you move towards the academic spaces on the far side of the picture. The picture in the top left again is looking into the learning commons. So these are sliding glass doors that will open. They're all part of our state-of-the-art security system as well, so they're all integrated into our security system. And then the bottom picture is one of our collaboration zones. So when we're finished, there'll be booths and counter height seating in this area, so you're able to bring an entire classroom out to do a group presentation in the hallway or have the students working together. And that is in the upper floor, which is for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. There's one of those as well on the lower floor, but that particular picture. This picture here is when you come up onto, again, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade wing. If you look to the right, that's another set of those glass sliding doors, and that's actually a picture of the STEAM lab. So that's where our students will go to do all of their kind of innovative hands-on work. It's got a polished concrete floor that's meant to get messy in that space. There's boards that you can screw things into. You can tie different projects from the rafters, really to help education come alive. And then this is a picture of one of our classrooms, again in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade wing. You can see the cubbies, and furniture is actually being delivered this week to all of those spaces. So it continues to move along quickly. And then this is just a picture of one of the tours that we did, walking down next to the academic wing. We also just wanted to take a moment to thank the community for their flexibility. Last week, we know that it was trying, especially at our elementary schools, with the heat that we experienced. We did work with our principals to try to make sure that kids are being hydrated, that they were getting mask breaks, extra mask breaks were needed, participating in outdoor learning. I know all the elementary schools got popsicles. We're really working with everybody to be flexible. We thank everyone for their patience. We know it's not an exact science. We know that there was a few hiccups along the way in certain classrooms, and we really appreciate the community's feedback. That information is important for us to hear, so that way we can continue to make sure we talk with the individual educators and the individual schools about where there are spots where it doesn't work, so that we can continue to grow. So we appreciate the feedback from the community.
Any questions for Keith? Looks like we're on target with the Smith School, and yeah, the comment on the heat is apropos. You know, we're going to have days like that, unfortunately, in New England, the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and it can be difficult. And you know, we apologize for the students who had a difficult time, or staff, or parents. And you know, the water was provided, as Keith said, slush and/or popsicles were provided, but it's just something that hopefully we'll learn from everything that we go through as we go along, and you know, we'll all get through these days together with a little patience. So, thank you. We're going to take a brief recess if the committee doesn't mind, probably no more than 10 minutes or so. Thank you. in my ears. And if you put me in a room with an airflow system and high-pitched ringing in my ears, it becomes very difficult for me to hear everything that everybody says. So these headphones actually help pick up, they pick up the DCAT broadcast, so I can actually hear everything that everybody says into the microphone. Makes my job easier and makes me seem like I'm competent anyway. And for several months I've been wearing them, but they had little earbuds. People might or might not have noticed, but I can't hide these. So it seemed like a good idea to tell the town what's going on. It doesn't interfere too much in my daily life, and as I say, I'm sure there are some of you out there who can sympathize. So that's why I'm wearing these really, really cool headphones. All right, so we are on to unfinished business. And we're going to start with the 2021-2022 school calendar.
The school committee calendar, yes. So we put this out every June. The dates for the school committee meetings are in your packet. Looking at a July meeting, and then the July, August, and October, it looks like our meetings that are on an alternate Monday, how about Monday, an alternate Monday from the second Monday of each month. And we're also looking at the budget hearing date for Monday, February 14th for next year.
Okay. And the July meeting, depending on how whether the state allows us to do it by Zoom or whether we'll be back at the high school, it's all in question as to where we'll actually have the July meeting and how it will be done. We know that lots of people are out of town, and we don't usually meet in July. We did last year, and I think we should this year, given the unusual circumstances. So there'll be more to come on how that meeting will take place. All right, so the next item under new business. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Still under the unfinished business, it would be the committee liaisons and subcommittee meetings?
Yes, I'm sorry.
There we go.
I do have subcommittee appointments. I want to thank everybody for getting back to me with their preferences, and mostly I think I've been able to accommodate them. So as we know, the budget and superintendent's evaluation is basically the entire school committee as a committee of the whole. On the policy committee, it's going to be Arthur and myself. On contract negotiations, hopefully that won't be too much longer, and you and I can finish that up, Arthur, if that's okay. Curriculum and assessment is going to be Alice and Robin. On the equity, I'd like Alice and Jeff, if you would, to be on that subcommittee. Thank you. On the school committee liaisons, Danvers Cares would be Jeff with Robin as a backup. Arthur Skarmas will be Deep. CPAC, Robin, and again Arthur as a backup, if you would. Sure. School building committee, to the extent that that's needed, I can handle that. Wellness advisory, I think, Arthur, I'll have you do that. It's only 3 times a year, and I'll be your backup. Okay. And I'll stay as legislative liaison. Signatory on the bill sheets. If you want to hand that off, Arthur, I'm okay with that. If you want to keep going?
No, I'm good.
All right. Now, if anyone for any reason is not content with the subcommittees or needs to make a change or ask for a change, please contact me, because we can usually work that piece out. So we'll get something out, like an email to the committee, so they know their subcommittee assignments. And
Yes.
we can talk more about that. All right. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
And again, thank you for your cooperation, and I'm sure we'll have a productive year. All right, further unfinished business.
Thank you. Policy is next. The superintendent recommends the review of policies from our May 3rd, 2021 subcommittee meeting for a second reading and for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Arthur, anything that you want to talk about in terms of what's here? Or?
No, I think we already talked about it at the prior meeting, so I think we're good.
Okay, excellent. All right, so if there is no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. It passes. Thank you. And we are back to Lisa.
Thank you. The next one is the MASC anti-racism resolution, and the school committee will discuss and vote on a Danvers-specific anti-racism resolution.
All right, so the context of this, as many of you, I think, remember, is that we did have a citizen ask us to consider adopting the resolution that was passed by the MASC at their convention, and it seemed like a reasonable idea to put that before the committee, but it was written very state-oriented in a big picture kind of way. So between meetings, I went through that and basically crafted it so that it would be more directed toward Danvers individually. But the content is essentially the same, and I made sure that in your packet you have both the MASC resolution and our resolution. I'm going to read the resolution. Whereas the Danvers Public Schools have the responsibility to equip students with their civil rights of obtaining a free and appropriate public education. It is also the responsibility of each school to ensure that we create a welcoming community for all students. Whereas it is the responsibility of the Danvers Public Schools to provide to all district staff, including school committee members, annual professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whereas the Danvers Public Schools will commit to recruiting and retaining a diverse and culturally responsive workforce. And whereas the Danvers Public Schools will examine our policies to identify institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement changes and sustainable policies that are evidence-based. And whereas the Danvers Public Schools will incorporate into its curriculum the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives. And whereas we as school district leaders can no longer remain silent to the issues of racism and hate that continue to plague our public and private institutions, therefore be it resolved that the Danvers Public Schools should guarantee that racist practices are eradicated and that diversity, equity, and inclusion are embedded in our practices for our students, families, faculty, and staff. School committee members should ensure that our school culture is anti-racist and acknowledges that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. And that essentially mirrors the MASC resolution that was adopted. So at this point, I guess what I would like is, if someone feels moved to do so, would someone move that we adopt the resolution so that we can have discussion?
So,
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Any thoughts, any concerns, any changes, amendments? So anyone, why don't we start down this end, Arthur?
yeah, so in general, I'm okay with it. And I think that, I just don't know that the last sentence, which seems to be like an add-on, is really what we're trying to say here. Because, I mean, obviously, we're going through this and basically saying that we're looking to essentially make sure that we don't have any racism, we don't have any discrimination, we do everything so that everybody is treated the same, equally, fairly. And I don't have a problem with the statement as it reads, except for I think it's kind of restrictive because it acknowledges that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. But I think that it goes further than that because I think we have many groups and communities that have, at times, one time or another, in all places, have suffered from discrimination and racist attitudes, and those include, you know, Muslims and Jewish people and Asians, and so I think that it's almost kind of an out-of-place statement, and it doesn't even really look like it's part of the resolution. So my preference is that it all should stay except for the last sentence because I think it's limited and restrictive and it doesn't really say what we're trying to say because it's not just Black lives, it's all lives, and I don't mean that in the sense of white lives and everything and everybody. I mean the sense of all people that have suffered some type of discrimination or groups. So that's my thought. I just don't think it adds to it, and I think it may even detract from it, from what we're trying to say.
All right, Robin.
Okay, so I had a couple questions because, and I was looking too at what the Massachusetts School Committee had also posted. So like when I'm reading it, it talks about, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? But it says school committee anti-racism resolution. So when I read that, I'm thinking it's only going to talk about race. But like as Arthur said, like, all right, but there's different forms of diversity. So like I think to myself, do we change it to school committee anti-discrimination resolution? Like, I guess I'm not quite sure how to word that correctly. Because, I don't want to forget about, like gender, identity, physical impairment, whatever it may be, right? And then my last thing is when the sentence, that Danvers Public School should guarantee the racist practices are eradicated and that diversity, equity, inclusion are embedded in our practices for our students, families, faculty, and staff. So I know this doesn't necessarily go in this, but I really, what do we mean by embedded? I don't think we have to say it there, but just to keep that in mind as we continue to go back and look at.
Okay, so what do we mean by embedded is the question.
Well, yeah, because I guess, we can say, we can adopt this, but how are we going to change the school culture and community culture? Not just by adopting a policy, but where's this progress? So change is great, but I need to see the progress. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
On to you, Alice.
Alice, yes.
I agree with both Arthur and Robin's sentiment. I think the restrictions, I want to be able to make this feel more encompassing, I think, to both of their points. I do have a question and a concern about the incorporate into its curriculum the history of racial oppression. I would like to better understand that. I would like to better understand where we are with that right now in our current curriculum and where the goal is in the future to get to that. And that is also based on just conversations that I've had with community members in Danvers. So that is something that I think needs to be addressed and clarified greatly.
Okay, and Jeff.
I'm actually okay with it as it is. I think, perfect is going to be the enemy of good here. I think we could pass this tonight and then either amend this if we needed to or pass a larger, more encompassing statement, which is broader, which, quite honestly would probably take, I would say, a month or 2 to draft, right? I think if we really wanted to do a thorough job of that, really, really think through it, and create something unique, I think we can do that. But I think as this is written, I think it has a particular purpose. I think MASC put this out there for a reason.
Yep.
The only thing I would ask is something to which Alice said, which is, whereas we will incorporate into our curriculum history of racial oppression and works by Black authors, do we not do that already? If we do, I would possibly change the wording to say, further expand or something like that. But otherwise, I'm fine with this as it's written.
So can I say something?
Sure, please.
I think it's a resolution. Resolutions are essentially aspirational. And it's not saying that we're a failure in any of these areas.
Right.
It's saying that, and quite frankly, I think we do a pretty good job of being an anti-racist school system. And we have, and it's been something that has always been part of everything that we you and I, Eric, have been on this committee for a while, and I think we've always we've always kind of looked to try to get there. Nobody's ever going to get there 100%. It's just not going to happen. And yeah, I mean, I saw somebody, I forget his name, but he's one of the people that's out there now, and he said, he couldn't believe this college students came, they knew nothing about slavery. And it's not true. I mean, every school system talks about it, deals with it, and it's something that everybody knows. And so, adopting the resolution doesn't say that we have failed in any way in those things. That said, I think that it can be, I think there are ways to make this a little bit better. I don't say perfect, Jeff, but better. And again, I think that, we can't exclude some groups with the language. If we're going to have language, it should cover things a little bit better. So, the sentiment, what it's getting at, it's all great. But if I think maybe it needs a little bit. That's my feeling.
Well, I would say that the MAS&C purpose, and when this was drafted and up for a vote like the end of last year, beginning of this year, it was, and right in the heart of many of the things that happened last summer. So there's no question in my mind that this was aimed very specifically at racism, particularly as it came to, the notion of that Black lives matter and Black lives were at risk in ways that other lives weren't. It's like that, saying that Black lives matter does not mean that other lives don't. It's just that at that moment, it was Black lives that were appeared to be most in danger and most being ignored in the country. And so I'm sure that was at least part of what was behind the nature of this as an anti-racism resolution rather than an anti-discrimination resolution. It was drawn for a very specific purpose. And I'm sure there are folks in Danvers who, would like us to, especially in light of what happened at the Unitarian Universalist Church very recently, with the removal of the Black Lives Matter sign and the noose being placed on the church side, that this is an issue even here in Danvers. So I think that's partly what people are looking for us to take a statement on. We could always come back later and do a more broad, and probably should do a more broad statement. I don't know if that answers any of your concerns out there.
I don't want to keep doing resolutions. Let's do a resolution and get it right. Whatever their purpose in drafting it, or how they drafted it, or who drafted it, I don't know. I wasn't there. It was last year. I think our purpose, though, is to tell everybody that everybody is going to be treated equally and the same, and everybody's going to get the respect that they deserve, and we're going to teach everybody about the things that they need to know so these things don't happen again. We're going to teach them about, as part of the curriculum that we do, about the racism and the Civil War and Jim Crow and the Japanese internment and other things that have happened over the years. So I'm not comfortable with limiting it to who we're telling that we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to not be discriminatory or racist towards you. I think that we either deal with it in a matter of everybody is going to be treated fairly and equally and the same, and everybody is going to have their rights respected, and nobody deserves to be treated otherwise, or we don't. And I think that's, if we're doing a resolution, that's what the resolution should be.
Can I add, Eric?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, Jeff just made a good point when he said that there was a reason why this came out. And I think that the community is looking for more statements, resolutions about, against anti-discrimination in any form, right? So, I mean, I guess we have to decide as a school committee, do we want to separate, like, do we want, anti-racism resolution and an anti-discrimination resolution? I mean, because then I think too, with the race, right? I mean, we are seeing attacks, right, against Asians, and that's a race, right? So I guess I don't know. I want to include everyone. I don't want to forget everyone out, but I also don't want to wait at the same time. I don't have an answer for you, Art, but I just wanted to share that.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Anybody else?
I don't think that this is the resolution that we need to make a statement. I think we have done a lot in our school district that we don't talk about to address a lot of this. So I understand the purpose of us writing this and having this. I would not feel comfortable passing this until it feels more inclusive, as Arthur and Robin are saying.
Okay. Jeff, any further comment?
No, I mean, I understand where everybody is coming from, and, I think this was written in particular, in support of, the African-American community. And if we feel like we can still have that same strength of purpose fairly quickly, like Robin said, and use a lot of this same language, I'm okay for it. But, nobody's saying we don't have these policies already. We already have anti-discriminatory policies. We are very, very clear on that with everything we have talked about and done. And so, to do this now sends a very clear statement that says we believe in this. I haven't heard anybody say anything that they disagree with on this. What we're saying is we need to supplement it with additional language, additional clarifications, additional support, if that's what I'm hearing. And if that's what it is, I don't know why we couldn't do this and then either supplement or, like I said, have an amendment or have something that's broader.
I do disagree with the last sentence, just so you know. I don't think that fits in with the rest of it. Well, why don't I make this suggestion? I think we all want to make a statement that racism is bad and discrimination is bad. I think we all.
Not just bad, zero tolerance.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, I don't think. I think first of all, whether we do this tonight or July is not changing the world. So why don't we? And I would suggest this, Eric. Why don't you and I kind of work on this a little bit together and see if we can come up with something that I think works a little better.
I am not opposed to that idea. So it's your position, Arthur, that passing it as written limits our statement primarily to the Black Lives Matter piece of it, and
No, I think more that it doesn't. It
Yeah.
does it to the exclusion of other people, other groups that I think should be included in this. And I think when you specify, you exclude. That's what I think, and that's how it read to me. Okay, and I don't want to be I don't want to be in a place of excluding. I'm not comfortable with excluding, and that's how I feel it reads.
all right, we have you made the motion, actually, Arthur.
You asked me to.
Yes. So, I understand that. So would you like to amend your motion so that this is a consideration of first reading? And
Yeah,
that,
no, that's good, that's a good idea.
and
yeah.
that we, then, you and I perhaps, as you suggest, can follow up and do some potential redrafting.
Not to exclude you guys, but.
No, but I mean, and I know there are going to be some people who say, well, why don't you just vote on it? Well, I'd rather, if possible, I'd rather have something that we can all agree on and make a strong statement about, that we're all as comfortable as we can be. But, I do recognize the argument, and I think we have to recognize the argument that in some quarters, if you make a more generalized statement, you are avoiding the crux of the problem, if you know what I mean. And getting back into the sort of, well, hey, all lives matter, and it's.
Well, no, but I mean, we're not, that's not the thing. First of all lives do matter, but secondly, more importantly, it's that there are many other groups, whether they be from a race standpoint, or a religious standpoint, a gender standpoint, that have experienced problems. And I think that what we should be all about is telling everybody that you're all going to be respected 100%, you're all going to be treated fairly. Everything is we can do to make everybody feel like they belong is what we're going to do. And I'm not, look, I agree with the fact that that blacks more than anybody else in our society have had the most discrimination and the most racist directed towards them. But they're not the only ones, and I think that what we're trying to say here is that we want everybody to feel 100% respected, and that's my issue. And yeah, we could do this one, and then we could do another one, but I don't know why we would do that when we can do one, because you know what? If you keep doing them, they mean less. If you want to give a strong statement of what we really believe, then I think we do it once and make it right.
All right, so we could consider this for a first reading. Therefore, people who are in general supportive of the concept can vote aye, and we'll move it on to a second reading, with recognizing the comments that have been made, and then we'll bring it back in July. In the meantime, perhaps Arthur and I can work on some draftsmanship to see if we can come up with something that everybody can agree on. Does that make sense to people?
It does to me.
Just so, I think people mentioned this before, Eric, but I mean, you're Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. And
Yes.
Arthur's policy, so I mean, that is a combination here that should work for this.
Okay.
Plus, we've been working on stuff forever, and we usually do okay.
I just think it's really important somewhere when we're writing this,
Mhm.
really like zero tolerance. Like I want
I
that
agree with that.
somehow in there, yeah, because that was
Okay.
missing also from the other one. You know,
I agree with that.
yeah, like no hate crimes, like zero, we're not tolerating any of it.
Okay.
And I know that was missing from the other one, so too.
All right, fair enough. So with that, I would call for a vote on this proposed resolution for first reading only. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Carries. All right, so hopefully we'll come back in July with something that everybody can more or less agree on.
I
and
have no
up
doubt.
to the vote.
Because I think everybody's sentiments
Yes, I agree.
are 100% in the same direction.
I agree. All right, thank you all for the discussion. I think it's healthy that we talk about these things. All right, on to new business.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Dina.
So we're going to go right to letter B. The superintendent recommends the approval of the proposed 2021-2022 pre-K-12 student parent handbooks for a first reading.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there questions or comments from the committee?
If they could do just...
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Please,
okay,
please.
just a quick
Yep.
update on them. For the most part, you see that there's not many changes, especially middle school and high school, other than changing dates and names. The elementary, we're able to do some clarifications in the student parent handbook, and including, we do have a change at our preschool where we are updating our preschool program, the days, and having an additional fully integrated preschool classroom. So we are looking forward to that work at the preschool level. What we are looking at, again, coming out of this school year, is that the fall would be an opportunity for our administrators and working with our school councils to do an equity audit of our handbooks, similar to what we just did with policy and the springtime with our policy subcommittee. And then that would go to the policy subcommittee, and we could come back with addendums before the end of the calendar year for the school committee, and then share that with families by the January timeframe to have updates. But it really would we needed to make sure that it had the work of administrators along with our school councils that have our parents, community reps, and students at the higher levels to be able to really get into our handbooks and really look at the different parts for equity.
Okay. Now, thank you, Dr. Dan. Questions from the committee?
I have a question regarding the homework policy. Was that revisited at all during this time, given that students did lose some in-person learning? Was it thought about, hey, maybe we should be giving students homework when we return in the fall?
For the elementary, you're asking?
Elementary, sorry, yes, I should have specified that. Yep, for elementary.
We have, no, we have not gone into that detail, and I think we were, similar to what we were sharing earlier, looking at the multiple tier system of support, and then the research of continuing the focus on reading as the major part of what we want students and support with families for students reading at the elementary level.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Yeah, I think the one thing I've heard from anybody in the community has to do with, and this may really go back to Robin's point to some extent, whether we need clearer statements in the handbooks when it comes to our disciplinary policies relating to, look, we're going to treat crimes that feel like they are motivated by race or by religion or by we're going to treat events, that feel like they're motivated by race, religion, sexual orientation, sexual preference, sexual identity, very clearly as something beyond just the typical, action. I think that's something that, should be addressed in the handbooks, but should be the product of a lot of thought and discussion in terms of what we want these things to say and look like, and what kind of message we are sending to our students in the community in terms of what we hope to accomplish. So, yeah, I do think that we need to take a longer look at that than we normally would at our handbooks, and because it really does fit into policy as well. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the approval of the handbooks for first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Passes. Thank you. Dr. Dana.
Thank you. The next item is the superintendent recommends the adoption of the procedures used to report the general government costs associated with the DESE end of the year financial reports.
Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. You want to talk a little
Thank
bit more
you.
about this,
Keith will
Dr.
be able
Dana, or
to,
Keith,
this
whatever?
one Keith will be able to take. Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
Each October, we submit a report to the Department of Education documenting all of the expenses that have taken place over the last fiscal year. As part of that report, the town reports back expenditures that they complete on behalf of the schools. The last time that this document was updated was in 2003. Since then, our general operating procedures have changed slightly, and we've redone how we do some of those allocations. So this document reflects those updates. It was developed in conjunction by myself and Rodney Conley, the Director of Finance for the town of Danvers. It was reviewed by our auditors in Lansing and Heath, as well as by the Department of Education. for their approval and feedback. So this is the composite document that brings that all together. You'll be voting it hopefully tonight, and then at the Board of Selectmen's, the Select Board's next meeting, they will also review it and vote to approve it, at which point it would be turned into DESI and become our guiding document for the report in this October.
Okay. And this basically deals with the fact that unlike a lot of towns, the town is responsible for the maintenance, upkeep, et cetera, on the buildings. And it's a significant cost, and how that is reported to DESI in order to calculate our per-student spending. And also, I'm sure, for purposes of Chapter 70 and all sorts of those issues. That's why I think we're doing this. So, are there any questions?
Nope.
Lots of shaking heads, okay. All right, so with that, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Carries.
Thank you. And the last item under new business, the school committee will vote to approve and sign the collective bargaining contracts for teacher aides, cafeteria workers, and our administrative assistants.
Okay, okay, so, let's see, Arthur, you just made the motion? Yep. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so I take that it is the will of the committee that we vote on these as a group. Okay. Keith or Lisa, any comments on the general terms of this, the general, without going into every period and T that has been crossed? Yeah.
I'd say we thank the 3 units for their collaborative nature during the process, as we see with all of our collective bargaining units. It was a streamlined process with these units. This year, primarily changes are the cost of living adjustments for each of the 3 years, as well as some small language changes for each contract, and then the change of Good Friday as a paid holiday for Juneteenth Day and swapping those out as paid holidays. So beyond that, it was just minor contract language changes.
Okay. And each contract calls for a 2% increase per year for 3 years. All 3 of these, I'm sorry, are 3-year contracts. So total is 6% over 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Further discussion? Is there any discussion at all? Anyone have any questions, thoughts, concerns? No? All right, we are content. So with that, I'm going to call for a vote. This is for the school administrative assistance contract. This is for the cafeteria workers and for teacher aides. All those in favor of these 3 contracts, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It carries. Please, if I may, it looks like we have 2 different copies of the agreement with the teacher aides. Is that a mistake or is that a...
We will fix that in just 1 second. No. No, it just has 2 different copies.
Only one?
There we go.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we're not signing them twice. Mr. Secretary. We want to thank those, the 3 unions for their cooperative nature of the bargaining. We believe the result is fair for all concerned and helps us move forward as a district. And of course, we thank them for all of their hard work, along with our teachers, administrators, and everybody who contributed to us getting through this very difficult year. And we look forward to the relationship going forward, so thank you. So while those are making their way down, Lisa, if we want to move on to our order of business.
Thank you. For order of business, a consent agenda, and thinking, Eric, if you'd like to talk more about that as our chair for this year, of looking at this process of making one motion to approve fundraising requests, the minutes, budget, and personnel memo.
I think we'll keep the minutes separate. But I think the other three, if you notice, the Board of Selectmen for years have had a consent agenda for basically sort of, I want to say pro forma, but yeah, pro forma votes that they have to take to issue business licenses on a repetitive basis, things that don't necessarily require their own agenda items. So I had a talk with Lisa about whether we could combine as Lisa said, the homeschool requests, which we virtually cannot vote no if Lisa approves, fundraising requests that, generally pass. I don't remember one that hasn't in years. And same thing with out-of-state field trips. So we'll have a consent agenda, and those can be moved together for the purpose of one single vote. So what'll happen is that during that consent process, anybody can ask any question they want about anything that's on the calendar. So we're not missing any chance to ask any questions. It's just that it takes one vote and it'll move things a little more quickly, and we can spend a little more time on matters that require deeper discussion. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. I think it'll move things along for us pretty well. So today we have one fundraising request, right? All right, so do we have a motion to approve the fundraising request as presented?
Motion?
Second.
Oh,
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Carries. Thank you. All right, do we have anything else, Lisa?
And then did you would like to separate the minutes? So I think if we had
Yes.
another motion to accept the May 10th, 2021 minutes.
I moved that we accept the May 10th, 2021 minutes.
Second.
Is that for the regular meeting, Lisa?
The regular meeting
Yeah, I was
to
just
be
gonna-
released.
To be
yes.
released.
Okay, I was just trying to flip them on to see what they were. Okay.
Second?
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Cheat sheet.
And we have the budget report and the personnel memo in our file. Are there any questions for Keith on the budget? There are, I hear none. And we're on target, right, Keith?
We are on target.
All right, that's what matters. And we have the personnel memo, so we're all set. So let's move on to communications.
Thank you. We keep every agenda having our North Shore Education Consortium, the link there. And just as all of our schools are finishing out this school year and beginning their planning for their summer programming.
All right, so now we are on to legislation, which is me. I did have the opportunity to reach out to Representative Sally Kearns in her office and speak with her. And she gave me quite a bit of information, which I'll try and summarize. She mentioned that Danvers local aid, Chapter 70, will be $7,200,000 roughly. Unrestricted aid is a little over $3 million. And they are the same in both the House and Senate budgets. There's a $40 million enrollment reserve. That's on the House side, not sure about the Senate. This is a priority, we understand, of school superintendents, Lisa. And this will be, the House budget includes $40 million for one-time grants to districts that have experienced pandemic-related disruptions in enrollment that would affect their Chapter 78. So if because of enrollment, you're taking a hit on Chapter 70, then you may be able to access that fund to make up the difference. $15 million reimbursement via grants to schools for COVID-related learning loss. The line item makes available $15 million in one-time grants to public schools and districts of the Commonwealth for the cost of reimbursing added costs and other summer programming intended to remedy and reserve pandemic and lockdown-related learning loss. The funding prioritizes grant application that addresses the mental health issues facing students returning to in-person learning after remote or hybrid learning. So again, something I'm sure you're aware of, and we should take advantage of that if we can. Legislation of interest includes House 692, which is on genocide and racism education. Sally is one of the co-sponsors of this. The bill would require schools to teach about the Holocaust and genocide in history. The bill would establish the Genocide Education Trust Fund to be administered by DESE for the purpose of educating middle and high school students on the history of genocide. House 3718, an act teaching anti-racism in Massachusetts schools, creates a commission to study and provide an anti-racist curriculum for elementary and secondary schools in the Commonwealth. Senate Bill 1973, an act advancing and promoting genocide education. House 651, Senate 382, an act relative to celebrating and teaching Native American culture and history. And House 582, an act providing for the creation of a permanent commission relative to the education of American Indian and Alaska Native residents of the Commonwealth. Student health and well-being comes up in House 673, Senate 318, the Healthy Youth Act, which will help provide young people with education and resources to build healthy relationships now and throughout their lives. It would require any public school choosing to teach sex education to use a curriculum that develops essential consent and communication skills, in addition to providing medically accurate, age-appropriate, and inclusive information about sexual health. There's bills on nutrition. There are bills on mental health. She talked about the ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, which we've talked about before here, so we sort of know what's out there. So lots going on at the state level. I have suggested to Sally that we might have her come before us at our September meeting, and had a chance to speak with Joan Lovely last week at an event, and would like to have her probably come in the October meeting if it fits her schedule, and we can reach out with a formal invite. But it's always good to have our elected representatives come before us and take questions and talk to us about what they're doing. They're both very active in the education area. So that is the legislation report. How about deep? Boy, we already had deep. Yeah. Thank you, Mary Beth. Danvers Cares.
So Danvers Cares, we're okay to announce the new director, correct, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay,
thank
great.
you, Jeff.
So we're happy to announce that Whitney McNeely has been promoted to new Danvers Cares director, which is fantastic news. And so I'm sure we'll have some opportunities soon to have Whitney present to us. But for those who don't know, Whitney has a pretty extensive background in social emotional learning, school counseling, mental health work, and she's already involved in several Danvers Cares programs and initiatives, and so definitely glad to have her aboard.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. That moves us on to, let me go back to my agenda.
The CPAC.
CPAC. Arthur.
Well, I think we already heard of the most recent news in the CPAC world, the hiring of our new director.
There you go. All right.
I don't know if there anything coming up, Lisa?
No, not for the end of the year, but they're already thinking of the plans for next year and looking forward to working with Lynn.
All right. Danvers policy we've already done.
Yep.
We've already talked about.
Nothing new.
So Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion. So let me talk about this a little bit. At the May meeting, we were anticipating the flag raising, which turned to the Pride flag raising, which was a really terrific event held at Town Hall, also at the fire station. I see Pride flags everywhere. I think we have it at the high school.
We have it all 7 schools.
Yep, all 7, so that's great. The other major discussion that concerned us would be the curriculum discussion. And there were questions from the committee about what kind of curriculum we teach, much like I think that Alice was mentioning earlier. What exactly do we do? How do we teach in our curriculum in terms of discrimination and the history of discrimination? And are we covering everything? I know that, Lisa and I looked at the frameworks, and we know that we're teaching to the frameworks, which include not only the issues of slavery and civil rights, but everything that happened in between. But there are questions and thoughts about that. So I suggested to Dee that the subcommittee of the Inclusion Committee, the Education Subcommittee, when we talk about in our regular monthly meetings or semi-monthly meetings, that would be a great topic for discussion. We've had some direct inquiries on the topic, and Lisa, Dee, and I are going to meet with some interested citizens who have expressed a desire to talk more about this. That'll be coming up. I did want to talk a little bit about the town manager's remarks at the flag raising, the pride flag raising. And he made some instructive and I think appropriate remarks about where we are as a town, and spoke about things that have happened in the last year that we as a town need to have conversations about. And he specifically talked about the incidents that happened in the high school in the winter and spring, the blue line flag issues, the discovery of the swastika in the woods near the Holden Richmond Middle School, and the discovery that the Black Lives Matter banner at the Unitarian Universalist Church on Locust Street had been removed and a noose hung on the church sign. And he suggested that, number one, it was important for all of us in leadership positions in the town to be as transparent as possible when these things happen. And as a school district, I think we are committed to that. There's a tendency, I think, sometimes among all of us to not want to draw too much attention to things that really are not what we want people doing or thinking about. But the fact is that if we don't do it, it's just as likely to continue. And it's important that we come out and make strong statements and to be clear about what happened in some instances. So to that end, we've talked about the issues in the spring and everything around our investigation quite a bit. So I do want to talk about the issue with the swastika. I'm not sure what the specific date that this happened, Lisa, but I'm going to say about a month ago, give or take.
It's 2 months.
2 months, actually, okay. There was a science class at the middle school. I believe it was a 6th grade science class. And that was outside in the woods near the middle school as part of their science class. And some number of students, it wasn't everybody in the class, but some number of students identified that there was a swastika painted on a tree within in the woods on school property, but not generally visible to everybody. They informed their teacher about it. And ultimately, the Danvers police were called in. And in looking at it, the police felt that the swastika was actually painted perhaps many years ago, that it was not anything of recent vintage, no way to potentially identify who would have done it. Certainly, because of its age, not someone related to the middle school at this point in time, but literally no way to connect it to any particular person. The swastika was painted. There's apparently paint you can put on a tree that covers something like that. And so DPW took care of painting the tree so that it's not visible anymore. The class involved, they were talked to about what had happened. It wasn't presented to the entire 6th grade. But the actual impacted students who discovered it, we reached out to them and to their families. And the teachers in the school and administration were all advised as to what happened. So this was, I think, part of what made this different and made this something to try and handle in a lower key manner was the fact that it wasn't anything that we could identify as recent. It doesn't make it right. It is abhorrent. A swastika is a symbol of hate and nothing less than that. It has no place in the town. It has no place, on a flag. It has no place on a wall, no place on a tree. It is offensive to anyone of the Jewish faith and, frankly, anyone who loves this country, given the number of people who died trying to fight the fascism that it represents. But having said that, I think we are committed going forward that when these things happen, we are going to be open and transparent about what has happened and what we've done about it, and make sure that as a district and as a school committee, we state in no uncertain terms how inappropriate, and that we'll do everything that we possibly can to prevent this from happening and to educate our students, because ultimately all of this is about teaching students a better way and educating them when they make mistakes or when they're exposed to hateful conduct by others. Basically, if we can, help students understand and teach students a better way, then that's part of our job, and that's what we're committed to doing. So that is my rather lengthy inclusion committee report. Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
I like that you mentioned transparency when these events happen. I think that's crucial, and to really come out with a statement and
Well, it's
keep up with we need to be open about these conversations.
Well, yeah, and I think that, as I say, there's a concern sometimes if you talk about it too much, it'll spur copycats, it'll take things in a direction we don't want to go. But the truth is, not right after this, but shortly after this, you had the incident again at the Unitarian Church, and it just goes to show you that as much as we love this town, there are some people who will put their hate into action, and that's really what it is. When you go to the trouble of taking down someone's sign or putting up a noose or painting something on a tree, that is affirmative conduct as a representation of your hate. And when we see that, we really have to speak up. Lisa, I've gone on here. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I agree, but I also don't think that, I don't think you said this, but there was no transparency issue with the school system in this particular case.
Yeah, I think that.
And just following up with that,
Sure.
we all know as school committee members exactly what happened and exactly what was done. And I think we all believe that it was handled appropriately, and I still do.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. I just think that there were people in town who heard, and this is what happens all the time. You hear secondhand, you hear thirdhand, and one of the things I think we can do is the more information we can reasonably put out there, while respecting privacy, which is the big thing, but the more information we can reasonably put out there, the better handle we can get on
Right.
what's
I
happening.
don't think we're not in the business of we're not the town manager. We don't make statements to the entire town.
No, but let's face it, the school community is a big part of it.
Sure it is, but again, in this particular case, I don't think it was incumbent upon the school system to make any different statement than it already did. Everything you say about the swastika and the all, it's all 100% true.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about where our responsibility lies, and I don't believe, was it on or off school property? And it was, I think, had been there for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, we just have to have, it has to be an understanding of what we have, everything has to be done in terms of the context of what's going on at a particular time. And I think we knew what was going on at that time, and I think we all thought that it was handled appropriately.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's a horrible, terrible, abhorrent symbol. But again, you look in the context of where we are, what we're supposed to do. I mean, I think we handled it correctly.
Well, I don't think, believe me, if I came across as saying we didn't, that is not my intention. My intention is rather, the context of what's happening is changing a little bit. And I think it requires us to be out front as much as possible and to make statements when it's appropriate. So, but yeah, I don't mean to imply, Lisa, and if I came across that way, certainly not my intent. But just, as a message to the town, we know how important this is. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Arthur. Let's see. I think that's the end of the agenda.
It looks different, but it is.
So our next meeting is July. Do we have a date for that, Lisa? Or are we still looking for that? The 19th. Okay. What we don't know is exactly where or in what form it will take, but we will certainly have more to say about that.
It's not going to be here.
Well, the selectmen have returned to the selectmen's
so we
room.
might go back to the school.
It's possible we could go back to the school. There was also some talk that if the governor extended the right to have meetings by Zoom, given that in July it may be people in different locations having a call, and we might do it that way. So, but there is more to come on that.
So is there the possibility for people to then attend in the public, like, because they couldn't because of Zoom, because of COVID, but now is that
They can
allowed?
attend.
They can attend.
They can now,
Yeah,
okay, I think
now,
some people
yeah.
were a little confused about that, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, people should know they can attend the
Okay.
meetings at this point. You know, they have to wear masks inside the school premises, I believe. But,
Okay.
But yeah, people can attend. All right, so with that, it's Mrs. Garmis's favorite motion of the evening.
It was Dave Thompson's motion, but I'll do it. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I take it there's no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Good night, Danverson.